Hello, good morning, everybody. I think we'll just give it a minute while our attendees trickle in. And maybe we can advance to the next slide. Thank you. Okay, good morning or afternoon, wherever you are today. I hope you are warm and safe and dry. My name is Kara Vincent, and I'm a knowledge translator with CIPSR, the Canadian Institute for Public Safety Research and Treatment. And I would like to warmly welcome you and thank you for attending today's session on supporting Indigenous wildland firefighter well-being. Next slide, please. I'd like to start our session by acknowledging the land Treaty 4 territory on which today's event is being hosted. CIPSR acknowledges the importance of the land we each reside upon. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in honoring relationships between nations and improving our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. From coast to coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples that call this nation home. Please join us in considering how we can each, in our own way, move forward in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. And I'd like to read a quote from a resource you will hear more about in our discussion today, Blazing the Trail, Celebrating Indigenous Fire Stewardship. Quote, Indigenous peoples in Canada are disproportionately affected by wildfires as their communities are often located in areas that are prone to forest fires or grass fire. First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples comprise approximately 5% of the population of Canada, but 33% of wildfire evacuation events occurred in Indigenous communities. As well, 83% of smoke evacuees in Canada were from Indigenous communities. End quote. I hope this conversation and others like it can play a role in highlighting these impacts on Indigenous communities and collaborating on solutions where disparities exist in wildfire response. I would like to, and I hope it helps us begin in a good way, to acknowledge that we will be engaging with some potentially powerful issues and experiences today. I would like you to please know that this is a safe and non-judgmental place for sharing experiences in wildland firefighting. And please trust that the intention of today's session is collective well-being. So that is our intent today, and I thank you for being here. Next slide, please. Very quickly, we welcome audience questions and comments at any time throughout today's event. Please feel free to enter your questions and comments into the Zoom Q&A box, and we will try to get to as many as we can. Today's session is being recorded and will be made available online shortly after the presentation, and you will receive an email letting you know when it's available for viewing. Finally, this event will be presented in English with the option of simultaneous captions or audio in French. Please use the link and follow the instructions that we've placed in the chat if you'd like to use that service. Thank you. And I'm delighted to introduce our esteemed panel this morning. It's an honor to have with us Elder Paul Coutre. Elder Coutre is a member of the Gift Lake Métis settlement, is a fire knowledge keeper, and has been a wildland firefighter for 47 years, 14 of which were as forest officer and wildfire ranger for the Alberta government. During his years working with forestry, he also served as a wildfire investigator, peace officer, trainer, as well as various roles in overhead teams. I love those hearts, keep them coming. He is currently the Fire Programs Coordinator for the Gift Lake Development Corporation in Northern Alberta. In 2024, Elder Coutre received the Okemo Awards Service and Public Safety Award, which recognizes the outstanding achievements of Indigenous men in Alberta. Welcome, Elder Coutre. Dr. Natasha Caverly. Natasha is a multiracial Canadian woman of Algonquin, Jamaican, and Irish heritage. She holds a Master of Education in Counseling Psychology and an interdisciplinary doctorate in organizational studies from the University of Victoria. Natasha has held research and policy analyst positions within Indigenous, non-Indigenous, and public service organizations, specializing in community facilitation and troubleshooting, management, and organizational behavior. She is a professional certified member of the Canadian Counseling and Psychotherapy Association, who holds the designation of Canadian Certified Counselor, specializing in organizational behavior, career counseling and development, and multicultural counseling. Natasha is president of Turtle Island Consulting Services Incorporated, was the principal investigator of the Giving Voice to Cultural Safety of Indigenous wildland firefighters in Canada project, and was a member of the technical writing team of Fire Smart Canada's Blazing the Trail, celebrating Indigenous fire stewardship. And I would personally like to thank Natasha for her guidance and assistance in the development and coordination of this discussion today. It simply would not have been possible without her involvement, and I'm incredibly grateful to her. Kieran Davis. Kieran Davis is originally from the Lac Seul First Nation Lookout and has been a wildland firefighter, interface, and structural firefighter with experience in supporting evacuations and emergency management. He is currently Social Emergency Coordinator with Jia Duyang Gayon Mino Oyang Health Transformation of Grand Council Treaty Number 3. He is a member of the Grand Council Treaty 3 and its 2SL LGBTQIA+ Council, which supports and advocates for Indigenous youth. Kieran has also sat on the Ontario First Nations Young People's Council and the Ontario Youth Council. Kieran is co-host of the When the Frogs Sleep podcast, which, along with knowledge keepers and other guests, shares cultural knowledge, experience, and wisdom relating to gender identity and culture with Indigenous youth. Jonas Joe. Jonas Joe is a member of the Ninklapalmuk, or People of the Creek Nation of the Nicola Valley, an interior Salish First Peoples from the southern interior of British Columbia. He spent 20 years on the Fire Devil's 20-person unit crew as a seasonal firefighter and 10 winters in the Forest Fuels Management Department with the First Nation Emergency Services Society of British Columbia. He helped begin the FireSmart program, which assists communities in reducing their risk from wildfires, and he has traveled BC teaching wildfire prevention. He was a member of the technical writing team of FireSmart Canada's Blazing the Trail, celebrating Indigenous fire stewardship. Jonas currently works as a wildfire technician with the BC Wildfire Service and a member of the First Nations Emergency Services Society Board of Directors. So a warm thank you and a warm welcome to our panel for being here. I think there's just an overwhelming amount of wisdom, experience, and expertise on this meeting today, and we're bound to have a wonderful discussion. So why don't we begin? Elder Coutre, may I start with you as an elder, a Cree speaker, and a traditional fire practitioner? I wonder if you can begin this conversation by sharing your understanding of the central role of fire within Métis life worldview and within the Cree language.
Thank you, Kara, and thank you for the kind introduction, and welcome everybody. As growing up in Gift Lake here, was actually born and raised here, but I grew up very much with the traditional lifestyle. We lived mostly in the woods for a good part of my life. Like my dad was a trapper and a logger and a fisherman, as well as a wildland firefighter. But and my grandfather was a traditional medicine practitioner. Like he was a healer, a medicine man, if you will. So I got a lot of information from those just immediately just from those two people. So fire was always a big part of my life, considering that both men were involved in not only traditional practices but also uh, you know stories from the wildfire world. My dad, as I said, was a firefighter from way like he remembers when they were using horses when he first started firefighting. So uh, I was mentored by this man for a good part of my life. So a lot of my experience comes from that as well. On my grandfather's side, he taught me a lot about medicinal plants and why we used fires for certain things. Like we would use it for ceremonies, smudging, and various other things. So whether I knew it or not, like it was something that molded me as a person, moving forward. Um, Not only physically but mentally as well. Like in the language, like as a Cree speaking person, which is my first language as well. Like I learned a lot of my wildfire practices in Cree as it happens. Even when I first started firefighting, a lot of our crews were Cree speaking people, like from my community and surrounding communities. So and I actually was mentored on the fire line before I actually took training as well. So I uh, I gained an understanding of wildfire and wildfire fighting from through the Cree language as well. So it really helped to help me better understand how we our culture is interwoven with fire. Um, as far as the world view, like I got to once I got training, I started to see it in a different perspective as well, from the colonial side, if you will, like the technical side, and not so like because in our Cree language, like we speak in terms of the world around us, and it's not so we don't go into the fine detail of everything. Like everything has a name. The words that we use in the Cree language are very descriptive, so it's one word can mean a lot of things. So you don't have to. It doesn't really take a lot to understand things once you hear them. But with when I started to learn about more about wildfire through training, I I got to learn about like wildfire behavior, fuel types, and those technical terms. And not to say that it wasn't helpful, like it is. So the gift that I got from all that was that the fact that I saw it from two lenses, and it was actually quite amazing to me. And uh, but in terms of our language and our teachings and our in the indigenous culture, it is much less appreciated in my mind.
Mhm. I wonder, Elder Coutre, if we can build on that, recognizing that within the diversity of Indigenous cultures, it can mean many different things. But I wonder if you could explain what is meant by good fire in traditional Indigenous-led cultural burning practices. What is good fire and why are the reasons it was traditionally practiced?
Mhm. Yeah, that's a good question. Um, well, as I said, like learning from from my dad and my grandfather, like it was there. There wasn't the teaching was that you're not to fear fire. It's part of us as like and how he explained that to me was. like fire is a part of us. We are fire and it's part of us. And as I got older, when I started to learn technical terms, I kind of likened it to the mitochondria in our body, which is our little batteries in our cells that help to run our bodies. I I took it to mean that that's what they were talking about when my grandfather said that fire is within us, like we're part of fire is part of us. So that little spark of the mitochondria in our body is our little piece of fire. But as far as good fire goes, like we used it for a lot of different things. Um, we use it not only for cultural burning, like looking after the landscape around us, uh, and in terms of fire mitigation, I didn't know it was in those terms. Like we called it mistihasigiwin. That is the Cree term for burning off and burning everything that shouldn't be, that could be a fire hazard. Um, and like I said, we used it for a lot of ceremonies as well. Not only cooking and warming, but yeah, for smudging. And actually, my dad was able. He was quite a skilled person. Like he was able to build birch bark canoes. So I used to watch him mold the wood with the fire as he was shaping the canoe. So there's a lot of good ways that fire can be used. And then when I got older and I started to learn more about wildfire, the perspective shifted a little bit in terms of fire danger. That was the language, right? Fire hazard. It wasn't so much about how you can use fires for a good purpose anymore. So yeah, it's there's definitely a bit of a clash there.
Yeah. Yes, and I think we'll talk more about that. But I wonder if anyone else on the panel has any thoughts about this idea of good fire.
Yeah, Jonas here. Yeah, good fire is a big part of everything we do here in the Nicola Valley in my area. Kind of grew up on the unit crew, learning a lot, kind of being a First Nation unit crew member and working for the government. You kind of see both sides of how things work. With cultural fire, we would always have to set an objective for us. And the way we set our objectives here is we go out and talk to the elders and get some information from them on the history of the area, traditional burns that they did and where they were kind of focusing and why and kind of learning, right? And I think for me, just being like a student of fire and learning all those little things is kind of cool, right? You learn the histories of the things that, what happened in different areas and stuff. So you kind of come out of it full of energy and just understanding a lot more about your area or our area. Um, and then we try and narrow it down to like specific areas and stuff and really look at it and build that out through communications and then actually implement some burns and stuff like that. So taking the idea of where we want to go and then try and get it into reality of doing it right. So creating that good fire out there.
Thank you.
Yeah, maybe adding to what's been shared so far is probably I'll preface my comments before I share that, I'm kind of coming into the wildfire space, as a researcher, helping with project management and helping to co-develop knowledge products in and around Indigenous fire stewardship. So, through those learnings and wanting to share it with broader audiences, good fire, there's that intentionality that is often brought into, those Indigenous practices. It's low intensity. They're looking looking at seasonality. So again, there's a lot of planning that comes into place. It may not necessarily be in a written format like a manual, but again, just as Paul and Jonas are mentioning, there's that experiential piece of that intergenerational learning that's happening on the land. It's place-based. So I mean, that's what kind of really sticks out for me in terms of good fire is it being Indigenous-led, being intentional, looking at seasonality in terms of those different practices and bringing that spectrum of intergenerational learning. And I guess just tied in, I know Kara's going to probably share some resources after the session, but I think what stands out for me is, if you want to see kind of further examples of this in practice, there's work that's being done in northern Saskatchewan. It's a collaboration between the Muskrats to Moose project team with the Prince Albert Grand Council, and they've put together a website, wearefire.ca, and you can start seeing some of the examples of what's happening in and around the Saskatchewan River Delta, around good fire practices in and around that area, and seeing that kind of multidisciplinary collaboration that's happening. There's also like the Good Fire podcast. You can kind of Google search that as well. In terms of different discussions that are happening, regional, national, international, about different forms of good fire. So again, it's not a one size fits all. It's not pan-Indigenous. You get to hear again some of the different perspectives or lenses, like what Paul and Jonas are sharing right now. So that kind of stands out for me in terms of different knowledge resources that kind of apply some of the different learnings that both gentlemen have articulated so far. So just wanted to add to that. Thanks.
I think I kind of wanted to add to that too is like I'm Anishinaabe from Treaty 3 Nation, and you when I was learning about wildfires, and traditional teachings around our wildfires, um, I was always told, we were the original firefighters, but that's not necessarily true. We were more like fire keepers. And my knowledge is that, when a forest is sick, that forest needs to burn and create new life after that burn. And so I think in the way like fire is always good, like I'm not scared of fire, but I think with like in terms of evacuations and that being primarily First Nation communities is because we were placed in these zones that are more commonly going to be like, environmental disasters, flooding and everything. And that was strategically placed there. And so the reason why we evacuate is because we got put into one place, whereas originally we were nomadic people and we traveled with the water. We were always on the water and we were nomadic in a way that we just kept moving. If a forest is burning, we're not going to be near that forest. We know where to go. Nowadays, we can't just get up and move our community and our people. And so I think with the good fire, I think our forests are crying for help because they're sick with all the pesticides that are sprayed, all the logging. Um, our water is sick as well with the runoff from the pollution, and like our forests need more help. And so they're burning because they know they need to regenerate and create new life. But that in a way is a scary place for our communities because they get so close to these burning fires, they can't just get up and move. Um, and like traditionally, like with prescribed burning, like when I think of tools that nowadays firefighters are using, they learn that from us. And it's not often that a trainer will say that to their class. But the prescribed burns, they learn that from us. Um, the water teachings, they learn that from us. And a fire behavior, they learn that from us, the way that we are connected with the land. Everything is taught by us, and I think that there's not enough credit to our knowledge in that case. But when I worked for MNRF, my trainer worked really well with Indigenous communities here, and he understood that, fire is good, and yes, we need to put them out depending on the safety um, or the risks that come with the fires. But like with Ontario, we're so scattered in northwestern Ontario. Like when people say, I'm from Ontario, I always ask north, south, and they say north and it's North Bay. I'm disappointed because that's 4 hours north of Toronto. That's not Northern Ontario. I'm from Kenora, or I live in Kenora right now, and I've been to the northern tip of Ontario, and that's north. I'm like not there yet. But and I think like with sorry, I lost my train of thought. But he understood that, you know, he needs to listen to the people here, and with the MNRF, they have a really good relationship with our northern communities because they have to work with them. There's communities that evacuate basically every year due to fires. And, had we long time ago not been put into these spots and kept there, we wouldn't have to evacuate so often. Um, but like I said, like our forests are sick and they need to regrow. And so I think a lot of these fires can bring a lot of good. Um, and I know there's a lot of like bugworm that are coming through our forests, and a lot of, I guess, sickness from pesticides. Um, so I think it's in some ways good, in a lot of ways bad. I know the pollution from the smoke is really heavy. Um, but I think it's a call for, Canada, even the States to, how do we treat our forests better so that they live this longer life? Miigwech.
Thank you, Kieran. Thank you for, oh, sorry, Elder Couture.
Yeah, no, I was just going to add to what Kieran is saying about the our involvement as Indigenous people in the wildfire space. It's been said in my province that it's been stated that if it wasn't for our involvement as Indigenous people in the wildfire, that Alberta wildfire wouldn't be where it is today. Like we've made a large contribution, and I do feel the same in terms of our knowledge and experiences with wildfire is not fully appreciated at times, and so yeah, well, hopefully moving forward that changes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we will probably talk about that a lot more. But I thank you, Kieran, for bringing up colonization. And it's a good bridge to a question that I have for Natasha. Um, Natasha, would you be able to give us some insight into the history of fire suppression efforts and the impacts that colonialist forest management had on Indigenous communities and individuals?
Yeah, sure. Maybe the first part around kind of wildfire suppression. Kind of initially, like some of the fire suppression policies around like early 1900s, Indigenous people, they were required by law to engage in, fighting fires near their home. It was either that or they'd be jailed or fined. And then kind of fast forward to say the 1970s, 80s. That was a preferred, career path, if you will, around wildland firefighting for many Indigenous people. I think the fact that it was seasonal, that you could be, making some money during the summer season, and then in the off season there was an opportunity then to engage in different like cultural activities, so that provided that flexibility. Um, I think where we started seeing a shift was probably around the 1990s. fitness tests were introduced. You started seeing maybe like firefighting being more positioned, maybe from a recruitment perspective around paramilitary. It's around adrenaline seeking, maybe not necessarily looking at or favoring the relation between peoples or to the land. And so there was more of an influx, in terms of maybe non-Indigenous post-secondary students engaging in wildland firefighting. So again, there was a shift in maybe emphasis of why people might be recruited or retained. And then I think another observation, and that might come up later if we talk about the cultural safety study, was um, despite having many years of experience, the practical experiences, the different understandings and appreciation of a variety of different Indigenous worldviews and knowledge systems, more often than not, Indigenous wildland firefighters kind of staying at that entry level. And I think it was speaking to the fact and, that recognition or being rewarded career advancement wise of having these different practical and Indigenous knowledge systems. Like it wasn't viewed as holding equal weight to credentials or Western science, which has been unfortunate, So I think there's been a disservice over time, in my opinion, in terms of really recognizing and showcasing the incredible amount of knowledge within Indigenous communities on that front. So that kind of speaks to the wildfire suppression aspect to your question, Kara. I think around forest management, yeah, I would just say that, for probably most of the 20th century, like Canadian wildfire policy kind of prioritized suppression, and that's disrupted. And Kieran spoke of that just earlier. It really disrupted like the natural fire systems, and it prevented a lot of folks in Indigenous communities from like practicing cultural burning. So more fuel loads, the forest structures get altered, and then because the knowledge isn't being shared, and again, Paul, Kieran, and Jonas spoke of that earlier. There's that erosion of the intergenerational knowledge. If you're not practicing, it's not something you learn in a textbook. You're experiencing it side by side, often with family, other community members. You start losing or the potential of that around learning about cultural burning, those types of practices. And then I think another piece around forest management, I recognize and that there has been progress made about looking at a variety of different values on the landscape. But again, more often than none, the protection of economic values seems to always supersede other aspects of like cultural values, people's livelihoods on the land base, spiritual values, wildlife values. So yeah, I think more could be done personally around like taking a more holistic approach, people's identity and connection to land, people, place, and I've always acknowledged that when I'm working in different spaces with communities across Canada, that, what I'm not going to probably get the full paraphrasing of it, but just like, you take what you need from the environment to live. And at the same time, just look at everything that you care about in an equal context as well. So just kind of recognizing that, there's a variety of different values, and that's not always necessarily reflected in forest management processes. I think the final piece that kind of stands out for me, just around kind of colonial practices and moving forward, is wildfire management has become incredibly more complex with different people involved, its industrialization, et cetera. So that ability, and I think there's lots of opportunities, and there's various groups across Canada from an Indigenous perspective that are making headway from an advocacy perspective despite those complexities, there should be, and space for Indigenous ecological knowledge. There are opportunities to recognize or showcase, again, some very powerful learnings. And like Kieran had mentioned, a lot of the underpinnings of some of these different training regimes or curriculum, the roots are within Indigenous practices. So yeah, let's recognize that more. Let's celebrate those strengths moving forward. So yeah, some different thoughts around your question there, Kara. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Natasha. I wonder if we want to speak a little bit more about the environmental impacts of widespread removal of Indigenous land stewardship practices. Does anybody else want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, when I think about that, like the way you say it, like I'm from Ontario, and Ontario's been in the news a lot about the Ring of Fire. And, we're not treaty partners with Ontario, but we're treaty partners with Canada. And really, Canada needs to step in and tell the province that they can't just step over our toes, because we are like stewardships of the land. We care for the land. We don't want the spraying of the pesticides. We don't want our resources removed. And it's what Natasha had said, like, we take what we need and that's it. We don't take what we want off the land. And I think there's a huge divide between like the Indigenous peoples, the way our views see it. We only take what we need. I'm not gonna go hunting and kill 5 times more animals than I need because I don't need that. Um, and I'm not gonna go cut down a whole forest because I want the firewood for like, and like I don't have a wood chimney or wood stove. And I think that like with Ontario's government and even Canada's government and other provinces, like they take what they want, but they don't respect the land when they give back. And living in Kenora, I hear a lot about, the mills, Dryden Mill. They dump that mercury back in the water, and where does that mercury go? That goes up north to the communities surrounding my area. Now they can't go fishing unless they want mercury poisoning, and even the water that goes into their homes, that's mercury. And I don't think people listen enough when we say you need to respect the land and the water, even the fire you need to respect. And like I could just talk all day long about like how many wrong things have been done, like when we're overstepped and overlooked. We might say no to something, but when we're pushed into corners to accept like payouts or like this big lump sum of money, like, hey, we're sorry we're gonna do this, but here's this money. Do what you want with it. And they push us into those corners that just, you know, tells us to to I guess stop talking about it, you know. Um and like I'm not normally a mad person, but I'm a mad person like when it comes to like our rights with the land. They need to respect our treaties with the crown, with Canada, and with the land, and they need to respect our rights. I'm a traditional hunter, but I don't hunt every year because I'm scared for our moose population. And the moose population is dying because of all the pesticides, of the water being poisoned, the deer population moving in and taking up all their crops. Um, and then I wanted to add about I think it was one thing that Natasha had added was in the 90s, they added trainings or like the fitness tests. And so the fitness test is actually designed in a way that prevents a lot of First Nations peoples to firefight on a type 1 team. And the reason behind that is because traditionally our people are meant to work all day and go all day, not for a 15-minute burst with this rush of adrenaline. And so we're not built to, carry like 50, 60, 75 pounds within 15 minutes doing laps around the gym, up and down stairs, ramp, and all that. We're meant to carry that all day long, but slower pace and not so fast. And realistically, firefighters don't do that amount of walking in that time. Um, that's just unsafe. But yeah, I think I'll end that with that. Which
Thank you, Kieran.
I guess the other thing that's as far as the suppression aspect of it is that once they started doing it, the main reason why I think that suppression was brought forward was to preserve the timber. Uh, that was a big part of why they wanted to, stop forest fires from burning up the trees and stuff. And as we all know, like it's a natural part of the environment. Like fire is a natural occurrence, and it helped to keep certain species from taking over, whether or not that was the purpose. But over time, once we started fighting wildfires, we got really good at it and suppressed a lot of the fires that should have been, cleaning up the landscape, so to speak. Um, so now that we have so much overgrowth and so much of these, as you as you mentioned, Kieran, some of the invasive species that come into play uh, are killing not only our natural plants of the areas, but they're they're presenting more of a danger as in the wilder grasses that grow really fast. Um, but yeah, so it has that domino effect as well as creating more of a fire hazard when you're letting the trees grow back more instead of having the wildfire burn them off naturally as it did in the past.
Thank you. I wonder if we can shift gears a little bit and talk about mental health and well-being. Jonas, you have decades of experience as a wildland firefighter. Can you talk about the unique challenges and mental health impacts of wildland firefighting? And how do you prepare yourself for that?
Yeah, it's a really big topic, and I started out in 2000. I was 18 years old when I started fighting fire, straight out of high school, straight into it, and kind of growing up in on a unit crew kind of thing. And I like saying that because I truly did grow up on a crew with guys, and I was the youngest person on the crew and I was working with men, right? Like actual guys that had families and everything like that, and they taught me a lot of things, everyday stuff. Just how do you drive a big truck? How do all the little things that you don't really think about. Um, and then you're not really thinking about mental health or all those things when you're 18 years old. You're just excited to be there and you got the job kind of thing, right? And I wasn't one stressor that kind of started over time, I guess, was the fitness test. That we kind of previously talked about, and it was always something that was in the back of your mind. And I never worked out before. I was young and energetic and fit all the time anyway, so it didn't matter. So I just show up to work and pass the fitness test with the zero stress. And then as I got older, it's like, oh, all of a sudden it's like this is a bit of a challenge now, right? So mental health, uh, that was always the first thing for me every year was January 1st. As soon as New Year's is finished, January 1st was the new year. 2026 is coming up here for us now. That's the day that I chime in and start thinking like, okay, how much time do I have before my fitness test? And then around that, kind of like section everything out so I understand it better. So like what type of fitness test is it? Oh, and then how do you prepare for it? And how much time do you have to prepare for it? And how do you tackle that objective? And and it all comes from discipline on my end too as well, and like putting a plan together and then sticking to your plan, eating better, all those things that we tell everybody. Um, the spiritual side of things too as well is super important. I noticed like going for a sweat first thing in January, going to the water and just, praying and thinking about everything, and even jumping into the water sometimes when I know it's really cold, but sometimes just jumping into the water helps kind of flush. You get kind of a good flush of energy, and you just think about like, okay, now it's on and this is the level. You just kind of rise to the occasion. And then we talked a bit about the adrenaline piece and how, you try and get your mind going on everything and really think about what you're up against. And the more you understand it, the better you prepare for it, the better you're going to be off in the long run. And then when on come fitness test day, there's zero stress because you did the work and you show up and ready to go kind of thing. Um, with regards to Indigenous mental health and working in wildland fire, there's lots of issues out there that we had on the crew over the years, and there was guys that were having issues growing up, going through divorces, having a lot of children. There's a lot of stressors that are outside the job itself that were coming into the work space. And then there's court battles over their kids, and there's a lot of things happening. And, as a group, we would always support our guys as best as we could as a family and stuff like that because we all work together. But there was a lot of stuff going on. There's 20 different people, 20 different families, 20 different things happening, but we all kind of having the unit crew program was a very good support system for each other to help each other get through some of these challenges and stuff. And we've been through a lot now that I think of it now, 26 years later. Thinking about holy, like the amount of stuff that we've been through, like how am I still here kind of thing, right? Like you think about, um, I could have changed the job 26 times every year. I could have gone and done something else, but there's just something about this job that I love, and the fire keeps you coming back. And it is a very important piece to my life because it teaches me so much about who I am and what I can learn in real life. So, um, yeah, there's lots going on. There's always going to be change in government. There's always going to be new people stepping into leadership roles. There's going to be ongoing regular business that you have to keep up. The safety culture is always changing and evolving around the job to itself. Crew culture is changing and evolving, and there's different goalposts there. Um, there's always a challenge to improve communications in different ways. There's public pressures, there's social media now, when we never had that when I was growing up. We were lucky to have our 5-minute phone call home back in the day. Now it's at the click of your finger there. Um, in order to, if you think of all those things, and then your personal life, and then the other guys around you too as well, there's a lot of things, and it can add up quite quickly. Um, and the way that I counteract with all that stuff is like I have a really good routine. It starts with routine and a bit of discipline. So like I get up in the morning at the same time, I try and go to bed at the same time, I eat healthy, I make sure I exercise routinely. I communicate, in my personal life and then also professionally too as well. Um, and one thing that's kind of helped is just trying to find peers in your professional life too as well, like people that can help guide you professionally in different ways. Like some people say to grab three peers, and somebody maybe one person, one of those three people to be outside your profession at least to kind of like somebody that you can kind of balance almost like a soundboard of like reality and like personal life stuff. So I always encourage that to find somebody that you look up to, somebody that has the same values as you. Maybe it's an elder or somebody at work or just finding people to communicate with that you can you build that trust and then just kind of they can kind of guide you through some tough times. And then just having somebody there. Um, the whole therapy thing and stuff never really worked for me, so I found that avenue of talking to somebody that I knew was a bit easier for me. Um, and then just being predictable and just knowing that fire is unpredictable. So I always over prepare by like 25%. Let's just say like, if you're going to bring one pump to the fire, your pump's going to break down on you and you're not going to have water. So make sure you always bring two pumps, right? If you need a water truck, order two water trucks because you're the one water truck's gonna get lost or there's just too many moving parts in wildfire. And same goes for mental health. There's too many moving parts for everything. So you really got to simplify everything down in your personal life. Keep things simple. Same thing with your professional life. Try and simplify everything down because there's going to be a lot of unexpected things happen. And then really trusting the systems that we have in place. Like we have the 10 safe work directives in BC wildfire. We really trust those systems that we've put in place to protect us and really trust our people too as well. Like these are the systems that we have in place and you have to trust that. And then you run everybody through and then you kind of come out the other end and you know that safety culture make minor adjustments as you need to as well. So but don't forget to check in on yourself. A lot of guys do the check in with themselves at 2 o'clock every day and it's just right before the fire activity is going to pick up. Take five at 2 o'clock. I hear a lot of people say that they'll sit down for 5 minutes at 2 o'clock and really think about where they're at in their day, take some notes, and then just like plan for the rest of the day because the afternoon's going to be um could be chaotic or whatever, or it might be easy kind of thing. But just taking that 5 minutes at 2 o'clock every day, and I even do it at the office here too as well. Like take a few minutes at 2 o'clock just to say, okay, that was a good day. Where am I at now? What's my rest of my day look like? And then what's tomorrow? Then you're already thinking about tomorrow. So, um, I mean, I could speak a lot on mental health and all that stuff, but there's a lot of challenges and a lot of things that are happening out there. So, those are some of the things that I like to focus on when I'm out there doing it. So, um, it's December what 11th today, so let's enjoy the rest of the month and then January 1st, it's go time again.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I wonder if anybody else wants to talk about mental health around wildland firefighting.
Yeah, if I may, like I do relate to what Jonas is saying because I started out very young as well. I was 16 when I started, and back in '78 it was quite different. We were more or less emergency crews. just get hauled out into the bush. We had to set up camp, and that's where we lived for, 2 to 3 weeks at a time. Um, and it was very long hours, like very long days. And the people that I worked with at the time were very, very hard workers. Like, these people had come through a lot, seen a lot, and but for myself, like personally, like it was the fact that you saw the devastation, like you'd see animal carcasses that had been burnt, and it kind of weighs on your mind after a while. They don't realize it at the outset, but after a while, it kind of just starts to sink in the amount of devastation that happens. And not only that, you breathe in smoke every day for as long as you're out there until you start to, beat the fire down, and becomes less. But the other thing that impacted me later on in life was the fact that our communities now are being burnt over, and I've seen some of the devastation that happens there as well. And there, it's more of a human impact, so it's really touches home when that happens. Um, I, an incident that happened years ago was on a fire which impacted my community, and my community got involved in an evacuation. So my children had to be evacuated to local nearest town, and I was working on the fire. So at the end of the day, when I got back to got off work and went to town to look for my children, like I went to this sports center where everybody is kind of congregated, and as soon as people saw me, like, and a lot of the people knew that I was, working on the fire, they just came running to me, like literally, and everybody was just in a panic and asking questions, and did our houses burn down? Did this happen? Again, and I had to reassure them that everything was okay, like we had the fire under control, and that everything isn't going to be okay. But just to see the terror in their faces, right, and the stress that they were going through really kind of affected me mentally. Um, and plus, the fact that my children were out there somewhere, but I did find them. They were staying at their older brother's place, so that part is okay. But as Jonas is saying, over time, like it really weighs down on you. I've had former fellow firefighters commit suicide, for whatever reason, and that weighs on you as well, like whether or not it is work related. And then, as Jonas said, when you work with these people, it becomes a family, and anything that they go through, they share it with you, and then you go through it with them as well. So it becomes a heavy burden after a while.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to add to as well was the provinces are all different too as well a little bit. Like I travel for, I feel pretty lucky in British Columbia sometimes because we don't have enough people, but we have more people that working for us than a lot of the other provinces do as well. So with that, it's like it's going to change. Like I've traveled to every province and territories and stuff now over the years, and I've got to see a little bit of each area and stuff. And there's a lot of work that needs to happen across Canada with regards to, adding more people, getting more people working and stuff like that. So, and finding good people. And building a wildfire service across Canada is super important, and I think that'll help with a lot of those stressors over time. But it's definitely different out there now than it used to be.
Yes, thank you. Oh, Kieran.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to, add on like when I only did wildland firefighting for one summer, and then I did interface, which is both structural and wildfire. Um, I've been training with structural firefighting in my reserve since I was 16, and by the time I think I was 21, um, that's when I no 20, that's when I joined the MNRF. And I think it was really hard on me to be with the MNRF because Ontario at the time was funding, I guess, First Nations crews, and a lot of them were Type 2 crews. And so a lot of the MNRF firefighters looked down on us because we were just the mop-up crews. Um, and I think that kind of weighed down on me. But spending the whole summer having like maybe not even a week home in total, it weighed down on me because I missed so much from home. And, I also relate to, the suicides and my friends back home, they died by suicide while I was out and away, and I didn't find out till like 2 weeks later when I got back home. And even being out there as a two-spirit person, I am transgender, so I'm a trans man. I identify as he, him. But in the blue collar world, sometimes being trans and openly trans or two-spirit can really put your safety at risk. And so I think that's one of the main reasons why I no longer am a wildland firefighter, is because I just I faced so much, I guess, bullying or like harassment. And my crew leader, he's never had a crew member like me before, but he was willing to, you know, take it to the higher ups and like, get whoever's harassing me off of these crews. And I'm like, well, there's no point because, they bring their value. They are great firefighters. Like, they're here to do the work. But it was extremely difficult, especially when, I'm from this area, I'm fighting fires in my territory, and there's people being brought in from other territories like Southern Ontario. Um, and they come up and they assume that we don't have, power, electricity. We don't have water, running water in our homes. We live in igloos or something. And like people still believe that to this day, and that really takes a toll when you're working in this industry. Um, and it's mind-blowing that, there's not enough education about us for people who want to come work up here. But like Jonas had said, the fire keeps bringing me back. So what I do is I'm the social emergency management coordinator, but I also help manage with evacuations. And so I'm more of for the people side. So while people are fighting the fires, I'm going into the communities to help evacuate them or support them through um, these situations and providing air purifiers to the homes if they don't want to leave, or if it's safe enough for them to stay, but the vulnerable populations. Um, and that in itself could take a toll on me. There was a community this summer, and the fire ran straight for them. It ran 28 kilometers in one day north, and at first it wasn't a risk to them, but with that south wind, we just had had it come straight for them. And some of these communities, like people are tired of evacuating. They don't want to leave. We can't force them to leave. But what happens is I end up staying there each day, waiting for them to leave so I can transport them back to safety. And I ended up being, I think it was like 2 kilometers from the fire. And it was just adjacent to the community. Thankfully, no infrastructure was lost, but that can take a toll on you when, you know, you need to be somewhere safe and your family knows that you're going to somewhere dangerous each day trying to help these people. And I think sometimes it can weigh on you so much that, like, but I would do anything for my people. Even though that's not my community. I serve Treaty 3. There's 28 communities in Treaty 3, and sometimes I'm even sent further up north in Treaty 5 or 9 territory. But it helps when you talk to the land, or what recently I learned Um, through watching my father, he'd always call out the moose when we were hunting. And one Thanksgiving, I decided I wanted to try. I wasn't hunting, but I went out to call out a moose. And not to brag or anything, but I called it out in 10 minutes. And we just stood beside each other and just acknowledged each other. And I had that connection with that animal, and there was no threat or danger, even though he was between me and my car, and I only had a little hunting knife. Um, but when Jonas had mentioned, start the year off in a sweat, go to ceremony, speak with the water, take a dip in the water, it's freezing, but you're connecting to the land. And I think that's really important when firefighting. Um, whether you're structural, wildland, or even supporting evacuations like me on the human side of aspect, or on the human side of firefighting. And I often go to the water. That's where it calls me. I have water right out my window right now, and I just stare at it all day. To me, that's my healing. Um, I don't really do counseling, but while I was firefighting, I'd go find medicines. Um, I would smoke. I'd smudge. I was safe, even though I didn't feel safe at times with other people. Um, but I knew in my crew, with my crew dynamic, they kept me safe. And yeah, really, it brings me back to the land with when I talk about my mental health. And that time I called out the moose, I just needed to talk to someone that wasn't someone. So I think, yeah, miigwech.
Yeah, I guess before we move on, I wanted to mention the many women that are out there in wildfire these days. Like one of them being my daughter. She's worked with me out in a fire, but their challenge, as she put to me, is the fact that they have stressors in the sense that they go through a monthly cycle or whatever, and then they're mindful that that there might be wild animals out there, and that could be a danger to them. So, uh, but also leaving small children at home, while you have to go to work, and it's understandable that they would be stressed out because but at the same time, they have to provide food and shelter for their children, so they're out there working, and they're just as hard workers as any of us. And uh, I just wanted to mention that before we move on.
Thank you. Natasha, speaking of mental health, I know you led an important first of its kind study about the lived experiences of Indigenous wildland firefighters. Can you tell us what your study revealed about mental health and well-being challenges? And also, what notable strengths or resiliencies that Indigenous peoples bring to wildland firefighting?
Yeah, sure. Maybe before I kind of talk about some of those kind of mental health and well-being challenges and then the resiliency factors, just for folks on the webinar today, the research that was carried out around 2021. It came kind of organically, if you will, from like conversations that one of my colleagues and I, my colleague being Amy Cardinal Christensen, being in the wildfire space, there were kind of different discussions that Indigenous wildland firefighters were having with us about, why they joined, why they've stayed, what have been some of their kind of barriers or obstacles as they've continued in that career path. What have they seen as like, things that keep them motivated? And so kind of moving that conversation to something where we could start, collecting some of those different voices and reflecting that back to the community was really important. So just wanted to indicate to folks it wasn't research for the sake of it. It wasn't about extracting information, as it was that this was a request from different Indigenous wildland firefighters that Amy and I had connected with over the years to say, is there a way to kind of amplify our voices in and around that space? So yeah, just always being very appreciative of the level of honesty and what is being shared within research projects like that. When people are sharing, just as Kieran and Jonas and Paul are sharing today on the call, some of their different lived expertise. So, but yeah, in terms of the findings, I think in terms of what we kind of categorized as like workplace concerns, I think the ones that really stood out that were kind of mental health and well-being specific were the frustration, and how this happens over time is like the lack of career advancement opportunities. So, being bypassed for, permanent positions in wildland firefighting or upward mobility within some of the ranking, within wildfire crews, that took a toll, that was shared with us in the study by, participants in terms of that weighing on their mental health and well-being, and the discrimination, not feeling safe, culturally safe. Kieran spoke to that as well. And then the long-term impacts of like, physical health, mental health, the workplace exposures, this need I tell many of you on the call today is, it's high stakes, in terms of the level of danger that, people are embarking on as wildland firefighters, providing public safety to us, and emergency management support. So that became, again, another stressor that was articulated to us, as well as any like illness or injury on the job, the recuperation piece, but also when you're not on the line, on the front lines, how are you then being compensated, particularly, again, seasonal versus a permanent position. So those were some of the things that kind of jumped out, Kara, in terms of like challenges and close calls, people that maybe there wasn't an injury per se, but they came very close to, being impacted, or seeing a colleague be impacted by a close call. And then, my colleagues on the panel today were mentioning about family and relationship issues. Those don't just suddenly disappear as soon as you, stand up and continue on the fire line. So just the recognition that you can't separate the personal from the professional. And so those were some of the different areas that were being mentioned. If I dig in a little bit more about the racism and discrimination pieces, the majority of the folks that had participated in the study had indicated that they had been impacted by racism. And again, it was based on their nationality and insofar as race, ancestry and race. So they did feel that they were unfairly treated, whether that was through supervisors, being bypassed for promotions. Some people may think of it lightly in terms of sarcasm or, saying some kind of something inappropriate or a snide comment, over time that just really weighs on someone, so not to make light of that. And there is a term for that, lateral violence. And that was indicated to us as some of those stressors or strains to folks as they are, again, carrying out a public safety service to folks all across Canada. So those were like the challenges. I think what stands out for me, Kara, around strengths or resiliency factors, there's like some really great stories. So I can't do any justice. I would never like try to duplicate that other than to indicate that we've got some resources that Kara will post afterwards about the stories of Indigenous wildland firefighters. And, in their own words, they're sharing, what brings them to that space each and every day. And Paul had mentioned again, one of the, I think, resources that we're sharing is the history of the Alberta wildfire, and the folks indicating that, the backbone of the history of wildland firefighting in Alberta has been Indigenous people. So just to indicate that there's more that can be said. And I think there's just a lot of power in the spoken word coming by and for Indigenous people there. But in terms of the study itself, what keeps people interested or joining wildland firefighting as Indigenous people? They like the work environment. They're helping their community and their people in their time of need. That really helped people lean in and not only be recruited, but like continue to be in the wildland firefighting space, being close to the land, that guardianship or stewardship piece of having that opportunity to play a part in caring for the land as well was another motivator. And that opportunity to be referred or work with or alongside family members. So again, we're hearing that in some of the stories today from my other colleagues on the panel today as having that opportunity to work with family and friends, making new friends. It is very relational in terms of kind of moving forward on different areas. Jonas spoke to a lot of the different areas about, how Indigenous firefighters cope with stress, that family and friendship piece, getting support, whether that's within the wildland firefighting space, in community, was just really important. Getting that proper sleep, the nutritional aspects, that routine, just again was another healthy practice that has kept many Indigenous wildland firefighters who participated in our study motivated, and having that opportunity that they do feel safety by seeing one another as peers, as one Indigenous wildland firefighter to another, to talk about some of their issues, not letting it, kind of fester inside and just saying everything's fine. So just having that opportunity, because trust is a really big factor, I think, at the end of the day, and in a lot of the work that's being done when we're talking about, mental health and well-being, is that mutual respect and trusting environment within a high stakes, area to do with fighting fires. So that's kind of what stands out for me, Kara, in terms of like challenges, but also the resiliency factors of the really important work that Indigenous wildland firefighters do all across Canada.
Yeah, absolutely. I wonder if I can also ask you about this idea of cultural safety. Um, what is it, and why is it essential that we understand it as an occupational health and safety issue? And further, I wonder what recommendations your report has made around this.
Sure. Yeah, so by and large, cultural safety probably has its roots in healthcare. I think the word first kind of got coined in New Zealand based on experiences of Maori people within their healthcare system. And, over time, it's been adapted in other countries, like here in Canada, looking at the fact that, what does it mean to be in an inclusive space? What does it mean to feel like you're really being respected in terms of who you are and your identity within whatever setting that might be? Healthcare, education, again, within this context today, like wildland firefighting. And so it's that ability that, do you feel safe? Do you feel that, you're being recognized in terms of being respected? You're not being diminished or ignored in any way, that someone is truly or authentically hearing you out, but also respecting your words and your actions. So I think what comes out for me with regards to cultural safety, maybe with the study itself, is it's great to know that it's, that term and the concepts are being adapted and applied in different settings. We post the question to the participants, in for the Indigenous wildland firefighting cultural safety study. We didn't come in with the definition from healthcare or education. So we wanted to ask, what does this term mean to you within an Indigenous wildland firefighting context? And so it really boiled down to kind of two areas, which are very significant in my opinion, was like honoring our Indigenous ecological knowledge, our cultural practices and customs. Again, my colleagues have brought up about the importance of ceremony and some of their different practices. So not dismissing or ignoring that somehow doesn't count. Like that is part of, again, preparing and being a really good wildland firefighter. And the other one is like co-creating this inclusive, respectful work environment, treating people, in a really respectful way, feeling comfortable, to share who you are and not have to worry that there's some kind of reprisal or what have you. So I bring all of those different things up, not only to answer your question, Kara, but like to not have that as part of occupational health and safety, like you're missing out a very important variable or dimension to safety because of what I mentioned before. High stakes, public safety, you've got to be able to be part of, and this is what was shared with us as part of a crew, you've got to be able to trust one another. If people are, diminishing you, making you feel lesser than, how do you fully trust one another in terms of actually carrying out all of those technical skills as wildland firefighters? So that's where it becomes really important. And I think another piece that kind of, if we shift into kind of that recommendation piece, is the role of a supervisor. That just came out time and time again in the study, that they play such a pivotal role, that it's really important that if someone's excelling, if they're feeling that inclusivity, they were often recognizing in the stories that were shared with us that the supervisor, whether that's like a crew leader, for example, they're demonstrating that practice. They're walking the talk. And equally, where they've had challenges, they were indicating that had the supervisor actually taken the time to get to know me, be open to different worldviews, maybe I wouldn't have had as many of the challenges or barriers put to me. So this is beyond just like technical skills. This is really fostering a culture of mutual respect and trust. I think that's really, again, something that, in my opinion, and what was coming out of the study was that's just part and parcel of when you're talking about physical and mental health, you got to be looking at a dimension of cultural safety. And I'm really pleased to know that I think just in the last few weeks or so, the International Association for Wildland Fire, they put out like a position statement about mental health and wellness. And one of the dimensions that they've indicated that wildland firefighting agencies should be looking at is cultural safety. So the fact that an international organization is recognizing that, I think, is quite significant in terms of lifting again those voices and perspectives of Indigenous people and different cultural practices along with that. So that's kind of what sticks out for me, Kara.
Thank you so much. As we rapidly run out of time here, I wanted to just open up open up the panel to any concluding thoughts you might have from today's discussions, any takeaways you would be keen to leave our audience with.
Yeah, Natasha, that last piece that you're talking about there is super important. So there was a lot said there. But I think if you're in this job and you want to really do it and you want to come back and the fire keeps you coming back every year, and you feel there's frustration happening, whether it's, you're not progressing or you're hitting a wall or you feel like you've hit a ceiling where your work in your work unit and you want to progress any farther. Um, for me, it's all about like you don't have to stay put where you're at either. There's a lot of different types of jobs out there. If you want to stay in the job that you're at, what you do is you just look at the job profile for the next step that you're looking for, and you look at that job profile, and then you just break it down on how do I get my resume to look exactly like that job profile, and then just set those goals for yourself and try and progress that way. Building competency, getting experience for your certifications, and really look at that certification manual and like say, okay, these are the things that I need for that certification to get to that next level. And then really practice and become a student in fire, and then understand how to become a good employee, how to, do all these things. And then if you're certified and you have the experience and you're a good employee and you're willing to move around a little bit, there's nothing that's going to stop you from progressing and moving on. That's what I did. I hit a ceiling at the crew member level. Next step was school. I had to go to school to get that next level. And even though it's a challenge for some people to go to school, there are institutes. We have Nicoll Valley Institute of Technology here. It's an Indigenous school college that has environmental diplomas, and just to get to to open the school door for me for the first time was really scary after 6 or 7 or 8 years of being out of high school, and going back to school was a very scary thing. But that's part of becoming, um, I guess, just growing as a person and really trying new things and progressing yourself. Because if you don't push yourself to go and do these things, you're not going to progress. If you're sick and tired of being a crew member, you want to be a crew leader, there's things and steps that you can take to progress along, and don't be scared of the steps, because they're there for you, and people are more than willing. That's what I found out. People are more than willing to help you along the way. Like, it was crazy the help that I got, just by applying myself a little bit, like trying to get into school. My high school transcripts didn't qualify me to get in to the school, but they were willing to put me on probation and willing to support me and make sure that I was getting through it or whatever. So, um, if I were to leave everybody out there with something, is if you're feeling stuck, just, find those peers to talk to, find a way, put a plan together in place, and then just start put down those action items on a piece of paper, and really start progressing that way. Because you don't have to be a firefighter. You can be a fire behavior specialist. You can work in as an information officer. You can work in communications, social media. You can be a photographer now and a videographer on a fire line now. Like, there's just so many jobs out there in wildfire. It's actually quite amazing. In the prevention world, there's forest fuel management, wildfire risk reduction programs, fire smart. There's emergency management now. There's a lot of jobs out there. So, um, you know, go get it, if I were to say. Get out there and have fun with it.
That's wonderful advice. Thank you. We are really, really close to time. I do want to give the last word, if he would like it, to Elder Coutre.
Thank you, Kara. And yeah, that's really good advice, Jonas. I feel the same way. Like people need to start stepping up and taking their careers seriously if they do want to move up. Um, but I want to thank Kara again for the this opportunity to be able to come and speak to everyone and share my experiences and my knowledge, whatever I have. But what I gathered from here from today is that we are starting, like example is Kieran, that is stepping forward to bring our voice to the fore, and same with Jonas. And I really appreciate Natasha's all her knowledge as well that she brought from her studies and working with us wildland firefighters over the years. It was a great experience for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I am sorry to have to end this wonderful discussion. There is so much more to talk about that we didn't get to, but I want to extend my deepest thanks to our panel, Elder Paul Coutre, Dr. Natasha Caverly, Kieran Davis, and Jonas Joe. Thank you for sharing your insights, your expertise, your experience. Thank you for your service, your research, and your commitments to wildland firefighters. Um, and thank you to our audience for being with us today and engaging in this really, really important topic. And if I can, I would like to close this session by reading a quote from Dr. Caverly's research report, Giving Voice to Cultural Safety. These are her words. We thank all Indigenous peoples in the wildland firefighting and wildland fire operations sector, past and present, who stand on the front lines to protect Mother Earth and safeguard our communities. And that's a beautiful way to end. And thank you. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.